Lee Jones, also director Michael Apted and Loretta Lynn's real-life husband, Mooney Lynn. And we'll be right back with City Lights on Location with Coal Miner's Daughter. City Lights on Location now joins Loretta Lynn. We have been talking around and about Coal Miner's Daughter with the people who have worked with you in bringing this film to the screen. And I suppose, having read your autobiography on my way to meet you, and you expressed your attitude about film, and you said at the time you wrote that book, my records are selling, my concerts are booked, I don't really need the movies. I'd like to know at what point you changed your mind and said, I think it's time, we'll do the movie.
You know, this is funny, you'd ask me a thing like that. When I got the book wrote and everything, why, I just knew it was going to be a movie. And, of course, I had no doubts in that it wasn't going to be a movie. I think I just started kind of having these feelings. And I said, okay, if you want a movie, we'll give it to you.
Loretta, did you have casting approval?
No, I kind of picked Sissy, and that was it.
Tell me why. What did you know about Sissy Spacek?
Not one thing did I know about Sissy Spacek. I'd never seen one of her movies. I had never seen her or read about her. And I picked her out of a big stack of 8 by 10 pictures, and I said to my manager, I said, this girl right here, Sissy Spacek, will be the coal miner's daughter.
What was in that photograph? What did you see? As a woman who has...
I don't know. I think I felt she had long blonde... She looked nothing like me in the picture. It was a glamour shot. And I don't know if I felt that she could take herself back and play from the time she was 13 up to now or not, you know. But I don't remember exactly what I did feel. I just knew that she would be playing it.
As a woman with the special extrasensory perception you have, did you look at that photograph and think you've known her? Did you feel anything in the picture?
At the time, I didn't feel that. I just felt that that was the only feeling I had. This girl was going to play the coal miner's daughter. But when I met Sissy, I felt like I already knew her. I knew her before we were ever introduced. And I just felt like we just hadn't seen each other in a long time. But, you know, it was just another meeting.
Sissy Spacek said that she'd wondered all those years why she'd kept up her music, what it really meant to her. And then Coal Miner's Daughter came along. She also admitted that early on in the production she was afraid she'd bit off more than she could chew. Did she ever come to you and say, help?
I helped her. I helped her with a lot of the singing and took her to the Grand Ole Opry and got her ready to do Coal Miner's Daughter. She didn't need much help. She had me covered pretty well.
I had a lot of sleepless nights.
What was the turning point, Sissy?
When I decided to do...
When you say early in the production you were afraid you'd bitten off more than you could chew playing Loretta Lynn, when did you regain the confidence?
Well, you know, I just didn't have time to worry. There were times in the middle of the night that I would wake up and think, oh, my heavens, what have I done? And I felt similar things during Carrie. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, Lord. But they're just, once you've bitten it off, you've got to go with it. And our schedule was just enormous. I mean, actually, that's not at all what I meant. It was very short. We did it in 9 weeks. And I think the turning point was probably the 2nd week.
Had you been speaking with Loretta?
I didn't. I spent some time with her before we began to shoot. And the one night that I really had the roughest time, she called. And I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. And she called because she was worried about me. And I couldn't believe that she called when she did. But there were things like that that happened from the very outset of the picture.
That extrasensory perception was always with her. Maybe
Always.
she knew you needed her and picked up the phone.
I think she did. I think she did. She's always been that way. I refuse to let her read my palm anymore for fear she'll tell me something I don't want to know.
They say you would not drink tea around her. Fear of the leaves disappearing. When you say you had the same kind of moments during Carrie, what I think is unique, and the first time we met and had a conversation and reminisced about your Canadian experiences, was over Heartbeat. and you've gone from Heartbeat, which I think is one of the finest films of the last decade in America, and I wish that it was getting a greater response. I just don't know what it is that's missing with that kind of film when one sees that ensemble acting and that kind of treatment of a movie. But my point is, you have created two living people, Carol and Cassidy, whom you met and knew, and then Loretta Lynn, whom you know very well at this point. I just wonder what it did to you as an objective, creative actress, working and creating people that were near you or available to you. Now, you may have had those problems on Carrie, but that was someone's imagination.
You mean playing a live person?
Yeah.
Well, there's an added pressure because you want so badly to please them, not only to do a good job for the director and everyone involved immediately with the film and for your audience, but you want to please that person that you're playing. But it's also a wonderful thing to have someone, if you need them, they can be right at your side in not a very long time. They were both very inspiring to me, just as a woman. They're both my size. All these things were coincidental. We're all 3, 5'2.5", all 3 Southern women.
But you didn't have to lose 20 pounds to play Carol and Cassidy early in Heartbeat, did you?
No, but you know, I didn't lose 20, I only lost about 5 for the early part of Coal Miner's Daughter. I think probably, they bound me. I said that to someone the other day, and they got real nervous. They didn't realize what I meant. But
And looked at your feet.
they looked at my feet, right. But the span was longer. And I'm now very hungry to do something that a film, a contemporary woman that lasts over about a weekend. You know, from 13 to 40.
Enough epics.
No more
Epic proportions.
Daddy loved and raised 8
City Lights on Location will return with director Michael Apted, actor Tommy Lee Jones, and a scene from Coal Miner's Daughter.
on a washboard.
If I can ask you to begin this conversation after looking at that scene, when you say that there's always one perfect actor for a role, what was it about Tommy Lee Jones that convinced you before that meeting that he was the actor you wanted?
Well, I mean, I think I needed a very strong actor. I needed, because the film is about 2 people. It's not Sissy doing a tour de force as Loretta Lynn. It's about a relationship, so I needed a very strong, experienced actor. And I thought Tommy had that, of course. He had a large body of work that was very varied in things, and I could see a lot of the different elements that I was looking for in Mooney. Here was an actor, one of the few actors I've ever met, who had a real instinct for, and don't misunderstand, I don't know the right word, but for a backwoods. I mean, someone who understood the sort of area and people that we were going to be dealing with, who had part of his life, part of his experience was from there, so he had a lot to draw on. And also, I've always thought Tommy was an exciting actor, and it's such a huge part, and we just needed that excitement. I just thought the combination of Sissy and Tommy was original and was exciting.
That's succinct.
Good.
Tommy, when Michael speaks this way and you explain, as you have, that you have a responsibility to Mooney, to people like him, and to people who know him and love him,
Yeah.
what is that responsibility?
As
an
to
actor.
make an honest representation of the man.
Is this the first time in your career that you have created a character that was indeed a real person?
No, I've played other characters that who actually lived. Did a television show about Howard Hughes, and I played Howard Hughes. It's not quite right to say that that I created the character. I didn't create the character. Mooney created the character, and saved me a lot of trouble. I wouldn't, if it was a fictional character, I'd have to invent certain things about the character, the way he looked, talked, felt, thought, and these things exist. So it's a question of reproducing them and making them part of Michael's concept of the film, and bringing Mooney to the film. It's not like having to create a character and then bringing him to a film. It's an easier job, basically.
Then you had the advantage of having the real person teach you how to drive that bulldozer.
That's right. I had the advantage of having a real person teach me how to run a bulldozer and teach me how, just from being around him, I could see how he wore his hat and what he did with his shirt sleeves as the day wore on. So there were all manner of details that were provided by Mooney, who is a very, very rich character.
Michael, I'd like to ask you something, because there's always a conflict in the Emerald Isle of Beverly Hills when film deals are being put together, and one hears legendary stories about people like Sue Mengers or Swifty Lazar. You are a man with tremendous credentials in England, in television. You have won every award available to you, and like colleagues like John Schlesinger or others, you are prepared to do a commercial between
No,
award-winning.
I never have, actually.
You never have?
No,
but
I'm from television. I mean, there are others, Alan Parker, Ridley, they come from that world, but I never have. I don't know reason, it's just that's the way the cookie has crumbled.
All right. Would you tell us what advantages you think you arrived with from England to do a film so indigenous to the American soil?
Well, I mean, I think the one thing which I didn't realize, frankly, until, I don't know, until quite well into it, was it occurred to me that maybe the fresh eye, that the fact that I didn't have any prejudice or any opinion about what is clearly a very controversial part of America. I mean, the very poor white area of America is something that I think certain people from the big metropolitan areas of America have an attitude towards. I mean, I didn't know they had that attitude, although I'd seen it, a hint of it in Nashville, the movie Nashville, especially an attitude of Beverly Hills towards country music, for example. But I think that the fact that I had this fresh eye could have been a strength, because there's a tremendous amount of Hollywood stereotyping about those people. And although there isn't a great heritage of good films about the Appalachians, I think the only, in modern cinema, the best evocation of that place was A Fellow Countryman of Mine, which is Borman's opening 10 Minutes of Deliverance, and so that was encouraging, and I think maybe in certain delicate areas of American life, an outsider can bring something to it.
Considering the amount of film activity in Canada, have you been reading any Canadian co-production scripts?
No, I mean, they don't come my way, I think mainly because they're looking for Canadian personnel, Canadian directors and whatever, so I've never been involved, it's never come my way.
Tommy, have you been reading any scripts submitted by Canadian producers?
I read one. I think it was called Silence of the North.
Yes. The one Alan Burstyn is doing now with Tom Skerritt. Well, who knows? I may see you both next in Canada. I thank you for this encounter.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm moving to Montreal tomorrow. Well, I'll probably run into you.
See you there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was born to call.
City Lights on Location will return in a moment with the coal miner's daughter herself, Loretta Lynn.
On a hill.
Do you know what I thought of watching you in the film? I was thinking of those moments when you were in New York with your relatives, Rip Torn and Geraldine Page, and you would go to Jerry Page's dressing room when she was in black comedy, pull out your guitar, and play and sing for her, and she would cry. And it just seemed so full circle from the woman who said, I always wanted to succeed as an actress because I never wanted to embarrass Rip or Geraldine. And I think the past year of your life in these two films are spectacular.
Thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. I look forward to welcoming you back to Canada.
Well, I'm going to get my skis and I'm going to come up there, get out of this rain.
A good idea. I thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Pleasure. May I just point out, in the middle of this exchange of admiration for you, that you have one of your vacation homes is in Mexico, but you have another one in Canada. And Canadians might be curious, without giving us the address, is it anywhere in British Columbia?
It certainly is.
You and Mooney never forgot, did you, all those trips from Washington State into BC?
Yeah, I love that part of the country. Really, it was the Canadians that really started me in the business. Did you know that?
Tell us how.
Well, I sang in a little club right up next to the Canadian border, Blaine, Washington, not too far from Vancouver. And this fellow by the name of Mr. Burley, Norm Burley, had a big lumber yard up there. And course, there were some other people went in with him when he started to label. So he come down, he heard me sing, and he put me on the 0 label in the United States, and on the London label in Canada. But it was the Canadian people that was filling up the house every night where I was working in the little club. Oh, I love Canada, and I love the Canadian people. They all want to have a good time, and I like that because they're not depressed people. You know, it's good. They're always laughing.
Well, let me tell you, the possessiveness and the affection is reciprocal.
Thank you.
Because you are loved in Canada, as you know, from Hamilton Place to Vancouver to Montreal.
Well, I sure love everybody up there.
I thank you.
Thank you.
And I thank you for Coal Miner's Daughter. Be a gentleman and point out that we are talking to Doolittle Mooney Lynn.
There you
However,
go.
you prefer being addressed as Mooney, true?
Right.
I would like to ask you something because it's a very important point in the movie. And we know from Loretta's autobiography before the film that she was only 14 when you met. And Tommy Lee Jones, who plays you in the movie, explains, as you, he took one look at that girl and he knew that was all he wanted in the world. What did you see in Loretta Lynn when she was 14 that you knew that was what you wanted?
You know, that's a real hard thing to explain, but I went to this pie supper to auction off these pies for the school, and all these kids were out there playing Ring Around the Rosy or Farmer in the Dale or Spin the Bottle or something, you know. And so I went out there and was playing around with them, and I got in the ring, and this one girl, I'm trying to get her name. Anyway, she was wanting to get next to me all the time, and I spotted Lord, and I was trying to get to her, and I'd even try to get in front of the bottle a little bit or something, you know. But there was just something about her. I walked her home that night because she wouldn't ride in my Jeep, and I just knew that was it, I guess.
Since Mooney, we have seen that wonderful scene in the movie at the function where you auction the pie and you buy Loretta's pie. Had she in fact substituted salt for sugar?
She certainly. I always thought it was her mother, you know, but it would later turn out to be her aunt that was standing there, you know. And they cut the pie, and I took a big bite of that pie. And I didn't know what to do, you know. you got swallow or whatever happened, you know. And it was real embarrassing. And it was her aunt, and she took a bite of it, and it, you know, and she knew right away, you know, and that got me off the hook, you know.
They say love is blind, but I think in your case, love touches the taste buds.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd like to share something with our viewers because there are many moving moments in the film. And I think of a moment in Loretta's autobiography, which does not appear in the film, where Loretta came home after being on the road, and the two of you were having a discussion, and it came down to the color of the wallpaper in the bathroom. And Loretta wanted one color and you wanted another, and you finally turned to her and you said, I spend more time in this house than you do. And she said, it was true, he did. And I use that only to preface a statement about you as a man who has your own dignity, your own image. What is the turning point for someone like you where you say, yes, she's Loretta Lynn, and to a lot of people she belongs to the world, but she comes home to me? When did you accept that?
That point is growing closer right now, I can tell you that. It's hard to be, you know, alone and home a lot, and we have definitely decided now that we're going to spend more time together, even if I have to go on the road with her more, you know, which I don't like to road, and but if that's what it takes, that's what it's going to be.
Loretta said when she sat down to write the book, there were discussions with you. She said,
Well,
what am I going to do? Should I tell them the truth that we fought and we've disagreed and there have been bad times? And what did you tell her?
I told her, I said, if you're going to write an autobiography, if you're going to tell anything, tell it all. Like I say, she told some things I don't know if I might not have told, you know, but she told them. And I said, as long as it's the truth, tell it, you know, because there's lots of things that embarrassing, you know, but if it's the truth and you've done it, well, if you're going to tell anything, tell it all.
Mooney, how many times have you seen Coal Miner's Daughter, the movie?
I've seen it yesterday for the second time.
Do you believe it's you up there?
I really do. I have that feeling, you know, there's so many things that remind you of so many things that are not actually in the movie, you know. like you're driving down the road and you remember the scene and you feel like you're there, and then you in your mind it says, oh, well, I wonder why this is not there, you know, like some little things that we even forgot to tell in the book, you know. But seeing the movie reminds you so much of it, it reminds you of a bunch of other things that really happened that you even had forgotten about. And seeing the movie brings them back, you know.
I'd like to share something with you because you share many things with us in your autobiography. And one of the more moving moments for me in reading your book was the realization that the first time you walked out on stage to sing Coal Miner's Daughter, you suddenly saw that your mother had been sneaked into the wings of the theater.
Oh, my. That was real hard on me. The record was a big hit, and I look around and here stands Mommy, you know. I started crying, and it was pretty sad.
Are we to believe, because we have that moment in the movie, that in the movie, Sissy Spacek is not singing Coal Miner's Daughter for the first time, since she gets all the way through it?
I think, no, that wasn't for the first time, because I think when Sissy sang the Coal Miner's Daughter in the movie, it was already a hit, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, she'd already, in the movie.
I just wondered if artistically you had decided, because you have very emotional moments within the film with Sissy and your mother, that you didn't need that moment.
I didn't need that moment, no. There were so many sad moments and hard to live through, even just in the movie. There were times were so much worse and so much sadder than we had them in the movies. But if they'd have put them in the Coal Miner's Daughter movie, it would have been hard for people to have really related to it, because we didn't want people to go out of the movie feeling down. I wanted them to really not feel depressed about anything. And that's what I think that they tried to capture in the movie, and not making it too sad.
I asked your husband, Mooney, during our conversation, how many times he had seen the film, and if he believed he was actually looking at his life, and that it was Tommy Lee Jones being him. And he said something quite wonderful about the memories flooding back, and the realization that whether it was the Jeep or the road, that a scene in the movie would remind him of something that wasn't in the movie that he had forgotten in his life.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's the same way. I remembered so many more things when I watched the movie, and I said to myself, well, why didn't I think of this? You know, this would have been a great shot for it too, but you can't remember everything, you know, till something makes you remember.
People remember a lot about you, and there are many reasons to respect you and have affection for you, even strangers.
Thank you.
You're welcome, it's true. But there are many of us who remember the time you were on the David Frost show. And people thought that Loretta Lynn had a message out there and she was helping womankind. However, that particular day you had Betty Friedan discussing the movement. Do you remember what you did on the David Frost show while she was talking?
I went to sleep, didn't I? I was tired.
Nothing to do with what Betty was saying.
It was probably pretty boring, because that was quite a show. I flew in there to do the show, and she come out and talked about woman's lib, and they didn't get a picture of me falling off to sleep. And then a doctor had come out and talked about his book. It was about sex. It was a sex book or something. And I thought, my gosh, this show is getting boring. And I went to sleep. And they caught that on the film. So when the show was over, my husband was in the green room watching. He said, Loretta, don't ever let me catch you out there on the set ever again with your eyes closed.
And so you've never done a show that Gloria Steinem was booked on?
No, but while right in the middle of her conversation, David Frost, the camera went to me, and there I was sleeping. And they left the shot on me, and he says, what about you, Loretta? What do you think? And I said, yeah, I think the same thing. It's embarrassing.
When you share something as intimate with us, when we read about the customized bus and you working, and we know, and there's a very graphic presentation in the film of the pressures and special demands that go into a life like yours, and we can realize that in 1 year you were hospitalized 9 times for exhaustion. And you get on that customized bus and you say, I'm lonelier than a prisoner. I don't draw the curtains because I've seen the country and it all looks the same.
That's true.
What keeps you going?
Well, now what keeps me going is I know that the hardest part is behind me, and from here out, why I'm just going to kind of spend more time with my husband. Me and him are going to spend more time together that we have lost in the last 15 years. I think it's our time.
But we had love. That's the one thing my daddy made.
City Lights on Location will return in a moment with Beverly D'Angelo, Sissy Spacek, and a scene from Coal Miner's Daughter.
Loretta, I know that the film Coal Miner's Daughter comes from your autobiography, but when did the idea of making it into a film first come along? Whose idea was it, and how were you involved in the creation of the film?
Well, I wasn't really involved that much because I kind of stayed out of that part. I knew when the book was out, I felt that there would be a movie. And I kept hollering, there's going to be a movie, and my managers thought I was crazier than a lunatic. And so I told him I wanted to go to Universal, doing press and stuff. And David Hartman asked me if I liked the movie, and I said, yeah, it's a good movie. He said, well, tell us a little about it, and I couldn't think of one thing I'd seen. I was so embarrassed. But Dave Skepner made me go back in at about 10 o'clock that night and watch the movie again by myself.
And that way you remembered
I took notes that
more of
night,
it.
so you can ask me anything you want to. But there's a lot of things about myself I don't like. And maybe by sitting back and watching her go ahead with them might make me polish up on the things that I don't like, you know. And I think it probably, that will probably is what I'll get out of the movie more than anything else.
Sissy, what will you get out of this movie more than anything else?
Oh, it's one of the most positive characters I've ever played. The main thing I've gotten out of it is getting to know Loretta. Yes. And I don't really feel sad that it's ending today because, you know, most roles you do, most characters, you have to kind of let go of that character the last day of shooting. But this one, I can always come back to Hurricane Mills and fall right back into it. Or I can go to her house and just be one again.
What I want to ask you all to do, I want to ask you all to talk back and forth to each other for just a minute in Loretta. Can you do that?
Well, I know I can. I don't know if she can. I think I've forgotten how. I know you have. We were sitting at the table. I was looking at some pictures that you had done, and Dude come in and said, you better get out there with the party because you're the hostess. And I said, oh, no. I'm the hostess. That's right. You just go out there and tell Loretta she's the hostess and play it to the hill. That's right, and I told everybody just enjoy my spread. Just have fun, do anything they wanted. I fired a couple of people. Says pull Loretta's flowers up. Go out there in her garden. I had to run everybody out of my garden. She worked in her garden all last week, and I got the dadgum blister.
You know, it is amazing.
She told the story once that when she was on stage a couple of years ago, the boy said to her, Mom, did you know your hair is about 9 inches shorter in the back? She went, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me? And they said, well, it's been that way for about 3 years. And she said, 3 months. About 3 months, I'm sorry. About 3 months. She said, well, that was before I started caring about the back of my hair. Listen, what I seen behind didn't bother me. As long as it looked good in the front. Right. Right, then who cares about the back? Well, the back anymore bothers me since I found out that that they looking. Yeah, so I have to watch my back too now. I'll keep an eye on it. Oh, you keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye on yours. Okay.
Two fine ladies, two good friends, Loretta Lynn and Sissy Spacek, two people who probably would never even have met each other if it hadn't been for the movie Coal Miner's Daughter. So much fun watching them together. They really have become good friends. Loretta chose Sissy to play the part without even ever having met her. And from all reports, Sissy did a superb job.
Cameras, action. It was all there last night at Showcase Cinemas. Now, crowds and long lines are nothing new here for an opening night, but those who braved the cold were rewarded with a bonus. Movie stars. Sissy Spacek, who played the title role, was warmly received by the frozen crowd, but the warmest reception was reserved for the coal miner's daughter herself, Loretta Lynn.
Best way to break up the action.
Before the Kentucky premiere itself, Phyllis George Brown introduced the two stars and the Lynn family to the mob of reporters. The obvious question, what's it like to see yourself portrayed on the screen?
Well, I really don't think I'm going to have to pinch myself and think and tell myself that that's not me up there, because I think it's me.
Was it pretty realistic?
Oh, yeah, it really is.
Did you consult with her during the movie?
Well, mainly before the film started, she worked with me on the music and told me all her little secret things, taught me how to talk, taught me how to sing.
Then it was back to normal. After all, it is normal to buy popcorn before you see a movie, isn't it? Paul Ryden, 32 Alive News.
And for her portrayal of a woman who conquered ignorance and poverty to become the synonym for the world she now represents, Miss Sissy Spacek in Coal Miner's Daughter. Ladies and gentlemen of the Academy, your choice is Miss Sissy Spacek.
I want to thank all of you so much. This is the greatest. For the first time in my life, I'm speechless. I started to work on Coal Miner's Daughter with a bunch of strangers, and I finished working on Coal Miner's Daughter with a bunch of friends. And I want to thank Loretta Lynn and my wonderful director, Michael Apted, and Tommy Lee Jones, my Doolittle, and Beverly D'Angelo, and Bob Larson, and Sean Daniel, and Bernie Schwartz, and Michael Chinich, and Tom Rickman, and Joe Tompkins, and Pam Wise, and the lady who gave me all that hair, Lorraine Robeson, and my wonderful husband, Jack, and all the cast and crew that worked on Coal Miner's Daughter. I share this with you, and I love you. And Mom and Daddy, I love you too.